Shalom and welcome to another Chamor podcast from abedan, teaching Noahide Judaism for Messianic Hebrews. It is the 6th of March 2025, Thursday, about 16 minutes past 5 in the afternoon on Thursday, the 6th of March 2025. And I'm just going to do a short reminder to anybody who is wanting to be a Messianic Noahide, follow the Messianic Noahide Judaism. Remember that Noahide Judaism is the only legitimate way that a non-Jew can follow Judaism. There is no other way. There is no other form of Messianic Judaism which is acceptable except to be a Messianic Noahide, practicing Noahide Judaism. So that's what we try to promote here. It is the origin of Christianity. I should say the origin of Constantinian Christianity, which is basically all Western Christianity. It is the origin of Islam, which we should say also the Abbasid Islam, because Islam was developed by the Abbasids and Christianity was developed by the Constantinian dynasty. But the origin of both religions is one and the same. That is Messianic Noahide Judaism. So that is the origin. Noahide Judaism is, of course, attested many times over in Talmud and Jewish writings, and of course proven by the fact that the Quran itself makes reference to it, as does the New Testament make reference to it. So pretty much it's a slam dunk. There's no way anybody can deny that this is the origin. It's just that the simple fact is 2 billion Muslims and 2 billion Christians out there don't want to acknowledge this as the fact. Anyway, we happen to find ourselves in a time of the year right now, a unique situation when Ramadan is coinciding with Lent and also coincides with Yashan as well, which we should talk about. I've talked about Yashan in this channel before. It's unusual that Ramadan should coincide with Lent. I think the last time was something like 33 years ago. So it's a good time to talk about it because it doesn't happen that often. So Lent, of course, is a time when the Christians are supposed to be fasting, but many Christians decided that they don't want to do that these days. They try to find other ways, like instead of giving something up for Lent, they say, let's do something positive for Lent instead, like give charity, because they're so lapsed that they don't give charity anymore except when Lent comes around. They want to do something like that. That's a bit of a crazy thing. They're supposed to be giving charity all year round, but during Lent, they're supposed to give something up to give them some kind of mortification of the flesh, to feel some kind of pain, specifically in the stomach, to feel what it's like to be poor, what it's like to be without food as you want it. And so they're supposed to give something up. Specifically, it was originally that Christians would give up fat for Lent. Fat symbolizing the Chadash, actually, the new food, which was given up in a Jewish tradition around this time of the year as well, before Passover comes. Before Passover comes, Pesach, Passover, before Passover comes, you're only allowed to eat Yashan food, old food, specifically of 5 kinds of grains. But if you happen to not live on that, then there's other things you can give instead. For example, if you were a nomadic civilization who lived on meat and milk, then giving up grains for Lent didn't mean anything because you never really ate grains anyway. So in order to feel something, when they were to symbolize giving up Chadash food, to eat only Yashan food for this period of time, many cultures decided to give up fat instead, because the fat of the food is what makes it delicious, what makes it enjoyable, and of course what gives you weight. So as you give up fat, you're going to lose a lot of weight. You're going to feel the fasting. You're going to feel the burn if you give up fat. And so the fats were given up, specifically oil, olive oil, butter, milk fats in general, and meat fats as well. And so that is how Lent developed. Now in Ramadan, they are fasting a different fast, actually, but just happens to coincide this year with this particular time of the year. It happens to coincide with Lent and Yashan. But usually Ramadan is always going to be 10 days earlier every year. And eventually, a few more years to go, we will get to the point where Ramadan coincides with a different fast, which has generally been forgotten by Christians, which is called the Advent fast. And that is exactly when Ramadan was originally, throughout the whole period of time that the Islamic sources, standard Islamic narrative, argue that the Prophet of Islam is supposed to have lived. We say on this channel that person was actually a historical person called Hanzala. But Hanzala was supposed to have lived at that particular time, died in the year 632. And throughout all of his lifetime, the standard Islamic narrative says that Ramadan was always at the same time of the year. It didn't change. The calendar was set. And then 6 years after his death, standard Islamic narrative says that some bright spark came along, decided to change the calendar and say there should only be 12 lunar months in the year. And they started to follow that instead. And so Ramadan started to get 10 days earlier every year, because if you follow 12 lunar months, you're going to have 355 days in a year instead of 365 days a year. So it's not enough days to follow 12 lunar months to get back to a seasonal sort of year. Anyway, so some bright spark decided to do that. They say it was Omar. He took out he actually changed the way they calculated the calendar from being stellar months into being lunar months. And so Ramadan started to get earlier and earlier every year. But according to the historical evidence, for example, if you read Fazlur Rahman Sheikh's book, The Chronology of Prophetic Events, Ramadan was always before Christmas. It was always coinciding with the month of Tevet in Judaism. And it went back and forth, but it's that corresponds to the time of the year that Christians called Advent, which also used to be a time of fasting and abstinence before the celebration of the birth of Jesus, which is Christmas, of course. But Advent also used to be a super fast. In fact, Christians used to have more than just Lent as a fast. They had Advent as a fast. They had Lent as a fast. They also had a fast in the summertime called the Fast of the Apostles, which has also been abolished, or not really abolished. These were never abolished officially. These were just dropped as Christians became more and more lapsed as time went by. Less and less concerned with doing good works, more and more concerned with themselves, and less interested in actually having to do something for salvation, and more happy to believe in a God which is going to do everything for them for their salvation. Basically, that's where we've got to the point with the modern day Christians. I can sit back and do absolutely nothing. God is going to do everything for me. Whereas the earlier Christians were, what can I do for you, God, to show my repentance, to show my sincerity? You know, that kind of Christian is a real Christian as far as I'm concerned. That's the kind of Christian I love. That's the kind of Christian I want to see more of. Unfortunately, we see the kind of Christian who says, do this for me, God, do this for me, God, do this for me, God. God, do everything for me. I am the king, and you, God, are my slave. Do everything I want. That kind of Christian is the word we have today, where it's all like a very personal, individual faith. There is no sense of community, really. There is no sense of repentance. It's just, oh, wow, God died for me. Fantastic, wonderful. I just get to do whatever the hell I like. And they carry on behaving like this. It's called the hyper grace system. Rather than any kind of effort, I don't have to make any kind of effort. Well, the good old Christians, they made efforts. They wanted to make the world a better place. They did what we call in Judaism tikkun olam. And that's really, the point of religion. If you're not doing tikkun olam, if you're not trying to make the world a better place, your religion is fake and it's worthless. It's completely worthless. It's just might as well be, forgive this rude phrase, rude comparisons, be prepared. You might as well just be masturbating, because that kind of religion where you don't have to make any effort, it's just like a feel-good religion, is a kind of a spell. It's a mental masturbation you're doing for yourself to make yourself feel good, and it doesn't actually do anything for anybody. It doesn't make the world a better place. It doesn't make you into a better person. It just means that God is there ready to masturbate your ego and make you feel good. That is the popular religion in the world today. And it's this really, really base, disgusting spiritual state that people have fallen into. This is not spirituality. This is self-worship. But as I said, in the early days, Christians had a lot of fasting. They were serious about showing their repentance, showing their sincerity to God, wanting to feel solidarity with those people who are in suffering. And they were not allowed to put their lives on the line either and go and march in protests to get the rights and to be thrown to the lions if necessary, to be able to make the world a better place and give us the freedoms we have. We have so many freedoms in the world today thanks to the efforts of such people. It really is thanks to those early day Christians who were really putting their lives on the line, so that we have so many of freedoms that we take for granted in the modern day, which are being taken away from us today by the modern Christians who are voting for dictators who are ready to take every freedom that we have away from us and make us feel oppressed again. And I say, well, don't stop the march. And if you want to be part of the earlier faith, then we've got to get back to this true understanding when people were fasting. So the Christians, as I said, they had the Advent fast, they had the Lent fast, and they had the fast of the apostles. The first to drop was the fast of the apostles, then they dropped the Advent fast, and now they barely even keep the Lent fast. But God bless you if you are a Christian who is keeping the Lent fast right now. And the Ramadan, as I said, was originally the Advent fast, but because it is following a 355-day year instead of the 365-day year, it gets earlier and earlier every year, and it's got to the point where now Ramadan is coinciding with Lent. That's okay. At least there should be some kind of solidarity between Christians and Muslims at this time of the year, I would hope. One would hope. But the meaning of these two fasts are completely different. They have different origins. The Ramadan fast is what we call in Judaism the fast of Adam. It is a fast of Tevet. It is a fast for Tekufat Tevet. It's a fast for what we call Nittelnacht, the Blindernacht, the darkest time of the year. And that fast was supposed to be established by Adam. So it's a really, really early fast. Whereas the Lenten fast is actually a way of sort of ticking the box, tipping your hat, making an acknowledgement to the Bible, to the Torah, as revealed at Mount Sinai, where God says that you shall not eat anything chadash until Passover. So there was like, well, when do we start eating Yashan then? Chadash means new grain. You shall not eat any new grain until Passover. So when do we start eating only Yashan grain? When are we not allowed to eat new grain? And there were various arguments about it. Nowadays, Jews take the most stringent option, or they're supposed to take the most stringent option, which means basically from Passover to Passover, they don't eat any new grain. So you have to wait literally a whole year before you eat any new grain or eat anything made out of any new grain until the following year. Well, that's a very stringent option. And although that is the alleged official position of most Jews in the world today, Orthodox Jews, I should say, in the world today, that is not the reality of how it's practiced. They say, to make it easier, they say, well, this doesn't really have to apply outside of the land of Israel. This only applies in the land of Israel. But that's not how early Jews considered it. That's not how Christians who came from Judaism considered it. They thought that there must be a particular time of the year when plants become new, and we're not allowed to eat from those new plants until plants become old, right? And that particular time of year when plants start to become new as opposed to old is called the New Year for trees, or the New Year for plants, which we just had a couple of weeks ago. So the New Year for trees is the time that you say, okay, any tree, any plant which is now producing, making produce, giving produce from this time on is considered chadash, is considered new. And you're not allowed to eat it, you're not allowed to eat from it until Passover. Then when Passover comes, we can eat it, we can enjoy it. But not until Passover. So that's what we call the Yashan fast. Okay, well, it's one part of the rules of keeping kosher, actually, but it's the Yashan food laws. So the Yashan food laws originally came into place at New Year for trees, and they continue until Passover. And then you can eat chadash. You can enjoy your chadash foods, chadash produce. So anything which was already harvested and able to eat before New Year for trees, you could enjoy it. You can enjoy your grain as long as it had become, as long as it had been grown, as it had been produced. The ground had produced it before New Year for trees. Okay, so you didn't have to harvest it at that time, but if you could see that the wheat was on the stem, you could say, okay, this is kosher. I can eat this because the wheat is on the stem before New Year for trees. Okay, before New Year for trees. And if it wasn't on the stem, then it would not be possible for you to eat that until Passover. You'll only be allowed to eat that at Passover. Okay, so that's the Yashan food law. So New Year for trees, as I said a few weeks ago, you would basically have a few weeks grace period where you'd be allowed to eat produce from the plants which had appeared before New Year for trees. And then you get to a certain point where you've run out of that food. And that's about this time of the year. You've run out of that food, and now you can not eat anything which grows, which appears in the plants from now on until Passover. well, they restricted this and said, well, it's not any plant. We'll restrict to certain grains, 5 grains, which you would not be allowed to eat until Passover. And so that's what the Yashan food law is, and that's where Lent comes from. And some people say, no, Lent's got something to do with Jesus when he went into the desert to fast for 40 days, because Lent is 40 days. The church, the Western church, that is the Roman church, decided to make it 40 days of fasting. But the older churches, the Oriental Orthodox Church, for example, they say, no, it's 6 weeks of fasting. Okay? They say, well, 6 weeks is 42 anyway. Some of them will say it's even longer than that. So I think the Coptic Church will have actually a full 8 weeks of fasting, 2 months of fasting. You say, why do they have full 2 months of fasting? They have a full 2 months of fasting because the month of Shevet and the month of Adar are off limits. There's 2 full months. When New Year for Trees comes along, it's halfway through the month of Shevet. And when Passover comes along, it's halfway through the month of Nisan. But you've got 2 months between the 15th of Shevet and the 15th of Nisan. You've got 2 whole months to go. Part of Shevet, part of Adar, and part of Adar, and part of Nisan. That's, although it looks like I've just said 3 months. You got half of each, so you've got 4 halves. You got 4 halves of each month. That is 2 months, 2 solid months of fasting before you're allowed to have the Chadash food. And that's what the Oriental Orthodox Church still does today. But the Western churches made it 6 weeks and eventually dropped 6 weeks down to 40 days. So if you're in the Eastern Orthodox Church, you know that Lent begins with they have Shrove Tuesday or Pancake Day, they call it. Sometimes they call it Mardi Gras. And then they have Ash Wednesday. And they start fasting from Ash Wednesday. They get 40 days. But in the Eastern Orthodox Church, they start fasting from the Monday. Monday and Tuesday are part of the fast. So they don't have 40-day fast. They have more than 40 days. So Monday and Tuesday are part of the fast. And the week beforehand is called Maslenitsa, or like Cheese Week or Cheese Festival. They often call it Cheese Week sometimes. Maslenitsa actually means fat time when you eat the fats. Because as I said, giving up the fat meant giving up the good, giving up the new. It was a symbol of giving up the new food. So you're only going to eat old food. It means food without gorgeous, delicious fattiness to it. Okay, so they gave up fat to it. All right. That's why people didn't eat chocolate as well. The idea of giving up chocolate, for example, and giving up sweets was because many sweets like fudges and toffees and chocolates were made with butter, made with cocoa butter or other kinds of butter, and nobody was going to eat fat at that time. So they gave up the fat. And that's why, you get these traditions which emerged. And then, of course, people would have a lot of chocolate at Passover time, at the end of this period of Yashan fasting. That Passover time came along, people have chocolate eggs and chocolate Easter eggs and things. And because of marketing, because of capitalism, and people forgetting about all this, those chocolate eggs that people ate at Easter time started to get earlier and earlier. Eventually, they're on sale immediately after Christmas now, and people are eating chocolate eggs and having chocolate all the way through the time when they were supposed to be giving up fat as a symbol of giving up the Hadash in time for Passover. So capitalism just ruins everything and destroys the sense that there is behind any tradition. And you might say, well, but why eggs? And the eggs, because eggs are the symbol also of new life, new things. They have fat in the center. There's fat in the center of eggs. There's the cholesterol in the yolk. The yolk is a nice fatty yolk. And so people would give up eggs because they were a symbol of fat. And so having eggs and having fat after the fast was for Passover meant that you were able to enjoy the fat again and enjoy the new life. Again, symbol of new things, Hadash. So that's where these traditions come from. If you understand Judaism, you can make perfect sense of all of this. If you don't understand Judaism, it makes no sense at all whatsoever. I mean, what's going on here? Where do these traditions come from? What's the eggs about? What's the chocolate about? What's the whole idea of giving something up? Where is that written in the Bible? But it is written in the Bible. The commandment concerning Yashan and Chadash in the Bible is mentioned. In fact, I think what I do is I open up the verse for you here. Yashan v'Chadash, and I will get the verse number for you. And it's and what is Yashan? Chadash. I think I got it here. Chadash. There's actually a Wikipedia page about it. It's under the name Chadash on Wikipedia, and you got let me just try and share this page. It says Leviticus chapter 23 verse 14, so you can see that there's quite plenty of references. I'll just share the screen, so let's have a look. Chadash, this is what you want to share. Here you go. There's a Wikipedia page, and down here in the section, you've got the sections. Leviticus 23:14, and then you've got the Mishnah, you've got Babylonian Talmud, you've got Mishnah Torah, Shulchan Aruch, and rabbinic sources. There's lots and lots of places you can read to find about this. But those of you who are really only interested in the Bible, you're going to be interested in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 14. And there it is. And you shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor fresh ears, until this self-same day, until you have brought the offering of your God. It is a statute forever throughout your generations, in all of your dwellings. So it's an eternal commandment in all of your dwellings, not just in the land of Israel, as some people argue today. In all of your dwellings, forever. That's what it is. And so you're not supposed to bring anything. You're not supposed to eat those things until you have brought the Chadash offerings, the Rechit Chasir offerings, to the temple. That's where that comes from. Okay, so you have that there for your evidence. Yep. And yes, somebody just typed in the, as I was looking for it, they just typed in Leviticus 23, chapter 14, chapter 23, verse 14. Thank you. Yeah. So that's the example. That's the biblical basis for it. Now, as Noahides, how do you observe this? I mean, it's pretty tough for Noah. This is a serious thing. Jews do it. Christians used to do it when they were serious and hardcore, but these days Christians are wishy-washy, so they don't do things like that anymore. And they like to say, oh, because we live under grace, we don't have to be a legalist anymore. It's funny how only 21st century and late 20th century Christians are living under grace, but all the Christians for the 20 centuries before that were pretty hardcore. But somehow all of those Christians are wrong, and only this last generation of Christians, the last recent generations of Christians, they're the only real Christians who understood it all perfectly. And all the previous ones, oh, they were all legalistic. Well, that's their argument. Just shows how lawless they have become. And hence, these Christian nationalists have voted for a man of lawlessness, which is causing all sorts of trouble around the world today. And they love to vote for their men of lawlessness. Well, the man of lawlessness was revealed after COVID-19. And I said during COVID-19, the man of lawlessness will be revealed. The reason we had the COVID-19 lockdowns was for the great falling away. There was to be a great falling away. There was a great falling away in the COVID-19 lockdowns. There's more apostasy during the COVID-19 lockdowns than has ever occurred in the history of the planet in every religion. And then we saw the man of lawlessness. He's very clear. It's absolutely clear to us. And he was actually in power at the time when the COVID lockdowns happened. And he showed he was lawless then. He showed he was lawless when he was out of power. And he's back in power again. And he's showing he's super lawless now as well. He's just about him and his friends. And we are going to lose all of our privileges, which our saintly ancestors fought for and gave us on the plate in our generation, and we don't realize the value of something we have until it's gone. Oh, well, then we shall look upon the one we have pierced, and we shall weep as one weeps for a firstborn son. But until that time, until it's taken away from us, we won't even know what it was. Yeah, that's how it is. It's not just one prophecy. Biblical prophecy is not just about one event which happens once forever. It's biblical prophecies have a recurring theme. They couple again and again because they're about the evolution of the human spirit in each and every individual human. It is your journey that's being described, your own personal journey which is being described, and that's why these things are eternally relevant after 2,000 years. Sure, there are plenty of people who are apostate, and that's in this particular generation, and there have always been people who have turned away and never found these things interesting, but haven't you thought to yourself, how come these texts are so valid still after thousands of years? People are still obsessed with these texts. Why? Because the people who follow them carefully realize that they are actually describing their own personal journeys. If you're smart, if you're wise, you will study these things and you'll realize, wow, there's so much wisdom in this. It's actually describing me and my life. If you can learn to interpret history and the patterns of history for your own personal life, you'll realize what's happening there. But nevertheless, I won't complain too much. So the point is that there is this time of year which is supposed to be for abstaining from things which are enjoyable. And we're not even supposed to eat bread, as you saw in the verse we just read there. You're not even supposed to enjoy bread at this time of year. You shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor fresh ears, until this self-same day. You're not supposed to eat anything baked with these things. Well, that's pretty tough. So if you want to, if you want to go on some kind of like carb diet, abstain from all carbs, that would probably be even better these days. Of course, in the olden days, when some people had literally nothing to eat except bread, then giving up fat made more sense than giving up bread, because they were literally starved to death if they didn't eat bread in some places. Okay, because Christians were poor. So as I said, how do Noahides observe these things? You don't have to observe it the way Jews do. Jews do have to abstain from such things. We have rules, and we have to store up beforehand so that we can have enough food to take us through the Yashan period until we get to the first fruits offering period in Passover, and then we can offer the first fruits, or at that particular time, it becomes kosher to eat Chadash again. That's the rule it is for Orthodox Jews. But for Noahides, it doesn't have to be that hard. You can find something to give up as a symbol of the Chadash. You find something to give up as a symbol of Chadash. Okay, and if you want to observe the same rule that Jews observe, then you can. But remember this: not all Noahides are required to have any interest in Judaism at all whatsoever. Remember, it is only the believing Noahides, those whom Judaism considered to be believers, not just covenant keepers. It is only the believers who are required to have some knowledge of Judaism. Okay? Now, the covenant keepers, there are plenty of them out there. They're in all the religions of the planet and all the non-religions of the planet as well. If they keep the covenant, they do the 7 basic laws, we have no problem with them. Those who are not against us, we're not against them. That's how it goes. They're actually doing something good as far as we think, and in our eyes, as far as we're concerned, we're happy with them. But to be a believer, that's a different thing. To be considered a believer in Judaism, that's a very, very different thing. And the believers are the ones who believe in the revelation of Mount Sinai. Those and only those are the believers. Nobody else is a believer according to Judaism. Only those people. Now, Christians say they believe in the Old Testament, they believe in the Bible, they believe in Revelation at Mount Sinai. That's what they say with their mouths, but there's no conviction in their hearts when they say this. They say they believe in the 10 Commandments, but they seriously do not believe in the 10 Commandments. Otherwise, they would all be keeping Sabbath on a Saturday when it says keep holy the Sabbath day, and then describes the Sabbath day in detail, the 7th day. And then they went ahead and changed it to a Sunday. It's like, that is not believing in the 10 Commandments. That's changing your thing. And what they do on Sunday, do they observe as the... No, they don't. They don't. They do not observe. So that's just a lip service. And then the Muslims also love to say that they believe in all of God's holy books. They believe in God's books, all the prophets. They believe in all... They love to say these things. And it's an article of Iman, an article of faith in Islam to believe these things. Well, just like Christians, they only say it. They give lip service to this, but in their hearts, they have nothing, no sincerity with regards to this. They don't believe in these books, really. They just make an excuse and say, well, we believe in them, but we also believe that they've been twisted and changed, and we can't believe them in their current condition because they've been abrogated or blah, 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 blah. But they make some kind of excuse so they don't have to believe in them. They make a clever game of words in order to negate the declaration of faith that they have made in these books. Same as Christians. There's no difference between Christians and Muslims in this. They both make a clever game of words in order to negate the claim that they believe in these books. So that's preposterous. It's just plain, simple, logically preposterous. For any rational person, it is simply preposterous. It's a bluff. It's a lie. It's hypocrisy. The thing they like to accuse the Jews of being hypocrites. That's what they themselves are doing. And that's probably why they love to keep on saying the Jews are hypocrites, the Jews are hypocrites, because they don't want to look at themselves in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm being a hypocrite. I'm a hypocrite because I say I believe in that book, but I do not believe in the 10 Commandments. I say I believe in the books of Allah, but I do not believe in those books. I make any excuse so that I don't have to follow them. Any old excuse, I'm happy. God abrogated them, the Muslims say. Christians say the same, that the law has been done away with. It's the same thing. They're not different. Christians and Muslims not different with regard to this respect. But to be a Noahide, you're going to say, well, no, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to look at the book. It says I have to believe in these things, so I believe in these things. Now, how do I observe them? Jesus says in chapter 23, book of Matthew, he says, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses. So he says to his disciples, he says to the Christians, to the crowds, and his disciples, the ones who are listening. He says, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses, so do and observe everything they tell you to do, but do not do what they do, because frankly speaking, it's quite far too difficult. And then he goes and describes certain types of hypocrite scribes and Pharisees as well. Not all scribes and Pharisees are hypocrites, obviously, otherwise he wouldn't have told his disciples to follow them. But there are hypocrite scribes and Pharisees as well out there. If Jesus had told his disciples to follow hypocrites, then Jesus himself would be a hypocrite. Makes no sense, all right? The traditional interpretation of this passage is, well, Jesus tells his disciples to follow those people, then he condemns them as hypocrites. Well, then Jesus is mad. He's insane because he just told his people to follow a bunch of people he's going to condemn. It's like, what are you doing? There's no clarity of thought. There's no rational thinking. There's no logic in this. It's madness. It's just insanity. However, if you take a Jewish interpretation of this, what does it mean? It means that Judaism is far, far too tough. Judaism, the way it is practiced by the scribes and the Pharisees, is too much for you. Do not try to do it. And we agree. In Judaism, we absolutely agree. We say, yes, that's perfectly correct. It's too much for you. Don't even bother trying to do it if you weren't brought up in this tradition. If you weren't brought up in the family, if you don't live in a Jewish community, if you don't have a Jewish town basically around you, it's virtually impossible to live as the scribes and the Pharisees. So Jesus says to the crowds, which is the Erev Rav, to the people who do not live as scribes and Pharisees, says to them, do as they tell you to do. So what do the scribes and the Pharisees tell the Erev Rav, tell the crowds to do? What do the scribes and the Pharisees tell the Christians to do, the disciples of Jesus to do? They tell them to keep the 7 laws of Noah and to keep them and believe in them as if they were revealed at Mount Sinai, not just to be a regular Noahide. That's not what the scribes and Pharisees do. The scribes and Pharisees don't even tell such people what to do because they're happy with such people. But as for the believers, they are told you have to believe and practice Noahide Judaism as revealed at Mount Sinai. You say, well, where is it in the Bible then? It's there. The 10 Commandments is there. You've got to have your Sabbath there, and there are certain things that you have to do. And there's no limit to how much of the law you might want to observe on the Sabbath, because that's how you keep holy the Sabbath day. That's how you keep holy. How do I keep holy the Sabbath day? The whole book has been revealed for you. That's what the Revelation Mount Sinai is for. It's explaining in detail how to keep holy the Sabbath day. Read it. Okay, that means you don't have to, as Noahides, you're so blessed. You do not have to keep any of those laws throughout the whole week. You only need to observe such laws on a Sabbath day to show God I'm grateful for the mercy and the grace that you have given me, and I want to show my gratitude by this little sacrifice. I will enjoy the Sabbath rest that you have given me, and you've granted it to the Gerim. It says specifically, so that Ger Asher B'Sha'areh, the Ger who is in your gates, will enjoy a rest on the Sabbath. That Sabbath is for everybody, including the Gerim. Ger is the biblical term, biblical Hebrew term for Noahides. That's what the term is. So it's specifically for Noahides as well as for Jews. The Sabbath is a gift for all. And so you can observe it in exactly the same way as a Jew does, except for a few differences to show that you are not trying to be Jews. It's a very important thing we try to emphasize is that you mustn't observe Sabbath to such an extent that people assume you must be Jewish. They have to notice that there's something different about you. You're not Jewish, but you're observing the Sabbath, but not as a Jew. And as long as you're observing the Sabbath, but not as a Jew, there's some significant difference about it. You can observe as many of the laws for Sabbath as you want. You can try and keep all the laws of the Torah, except for some very obvious detail, which distinguish you from Jews. You can keep all of the laws except that, and that is how if you want, that's how you can observe the Sabbath. Or you don't have to observe any of the laws except for one. to show that you observe the Sabbath. Let me explain in more detail what do I mean by this Sabbath observance. For example, that what we're talking about right now, the Yashan fast. Okay, you could, during this particular time of the year, observe the rule concerning eating only Yashan food. You can say, oh, well, I'm going to do that on Sabbath then. And that's perfect. You observe the Yashan rule on Sabbath. Perfect. Wonderful. For all of the Sabbaths throughout the Lenten period, you would observe the Yashan food rule, saying, I'm going to eat only kosher food on Sabbath. Fantastic. Wonderful. You can eat all your ham sandwiches all the way through the week, but on Sabbath, you're going to follow the biblical principle on washing yourself before the Sabbath starts. That's what it says. You shall wash your clothes and be unclean until evening, is the phrase which comes, your body, you shall wash yourself and your clothes and be unclean until evening. And then the evening comes, you shall be clean. You should be tahor. So you can purify yourself on the Friday afternoon, and then you can be clean and only eat kosher food, including, that means during the Yashan period, only Yashan grain, until the end of the Sabbath. There's an example of how to be holy, and you can keep all the laws as you want. But Jesus also says, there are things you must not do so that you are distinguished from Jews, because if you do these things, then people are going to confuse you with the scribes and the Pharisees. So he says specifically, he says, do not wear tzitzit and do not wear tefillin, phylacteries, its translation. So if you're observing all the laws of Sabbath, but you do not use phylacteries and you do not wear tzitzit, then there's an example of how you are going to be considered, well, that's unusual. You're not a Jew because you don't have tzitzit, but you are observing Sabbath. So you've done something in a way to distinguish yourself from Jews. And you say, yeah, I'm not a Jew. I'm a Noahide, and I'm allowed to observe all these laws as long as I distinguish myself from a Jew in some way. So that's the rule. That's Judaism. That's what the scribes and the Pharisees teach. That's what the Bible teaches. That's what the New Testament teaches. And that's the way you should be observing it. And as I said, since Ramadan was once upon a time also Advent fast, it means that once upon a time Muslims were also following Noahide Judaism. And that means they should also be following at this particular time of year the Yashan food laws, or some kind of symbol of it, like Christians have Lent, as I explained at the beginning of the video. So there should be something which you observe to symbolize the Yashan food laws, that you're not having Chadash until Passover comes. So another example of what you could do to observe the Sabbath as a Noahide is as I said, the minimum requirement is that you should, when Jesus broke bread and blessed the wine with his disciples, he said, do this in memory of me. This is at the end of a Yom Tov, at the end of a Sabbath and Yom Tov. This is called Havdalah, Meleva Malka. And that's the minimum. You do that one because he says specifically, do this in remembrance of me. So you must do Havdalah. That's the minimum Sabbath observance. But the maximum Sabbath, there's no limit, as long as you don't put on phylacteries, tefillin, and you don't put on tzitzit as well, as long as you're distinguished from Jew. So there's no limit, really, except for those two, of how much of the laws of the Torah you want to observe on Sabbath. And somebody wants to just observe the one thing on Sabbath, God bless them, they're doing all right. Somebody wants to observe all the rest of the laws of the Sabbath, well, God bless them, doing all right too. And there should be no judgment among believers and say, well, that person's not keeping a very good Sabbath, because at the end of the day, the minimum requirement is only Havdalah. That's the minimum requirement. As long as everybody is ticking the box with regards to Havdalah, then you're all doing what the commandment says. You're all keeping holy the Sabbath day. And that's what Jesus told his disciples to do in memory of him. But if you want to do more, nothing is stopping you. Just make sure you do not put on the tzitzit. Okay, don't wear the phylacteries as well. Many Jews don't wear phylacteries on Sabbaths anyway. But then it would mean don't put on the phylacteries throughout the rest of the week either. Or if you want to, you can put the phylacteries on Sabbath only, but you would never use them throughout the rest of the week. So you're doing exact opposite of what Jews do. But I recommend be careful, because phylacteries, really, these are a symbol that Jews of Jews. And I would say make sure you don't possess a copy of phylacteries. Do not have a pair of phylacteries. Don't have the tefillin with you, and don't have tzitzit with you. Maybe you can have them on a chair as a symbol of Jesus, for example, but don't wear them yourselves ever. That specifically Jesus says, don't do this, do not do this. So don't wear them yourselves ever. And that's how you would distinguish yourself from the Jews as a Noahide while keeping the Sabbath. And that's also, as I said, the Yashan, a perfect example of how you can observe Yashan foods. So if you want to give up, but it's difficult, because you're not allowed to really punish yourself with regards to Sabbath. You're supposed to enjoy the Sabbath. You're supposed to relax and enjoy the Sabbath. And if you are in a place where your only food is bread, then giving up Yashan grain on Sabbath is not a good way to observe the Sabbath, because you're going to be having difficulty on the Sabbath. And the recommendation is for all Noahides, never ever do something on a Sabbath or abstain from doing something on the Sabbath which is going to make your life incredibly painful and difficult. For example, fasting. Fasting on a Sabbath is not allowed in Judaism. You're not allowed to fast on the Sabbath unless, of course, Yom Kippur coincides with the Sabbath, in which case Yom Kippur trumps that rule and says, no, you have to fast because it's Yom Kippur, and that's more important. So with the exception of Yom Kippur, Sabbaths are not supposed to be times of fasting. So if you can enjoy a Sabbath and have food that you enjoy on a Sabbath without killing yourself, starving to death, and you can give up Yashan foods as Jews do, then go for it. Do it. That's really a good idea. But if you can't give up Yashan, I won't say give up Chadash foods. That was what I was trying to say. If you can't enjoy the Sabbath, if you give up Chadash foods, then don't do it that way. Don't fast from Chadash on Sabbath if it's going to make you painful. It's not Yom Kippur. Sabbaths are not Yom Kippur. Only one Sabbath is a Yom Kippur for the whole year, and the rest of the Sabbath is supposed to be enjoyable times. So if giving up Chadash on a Sabbath is going to make your life painful, then don't do it. But if giving up Chadash on a Sabbath is going to be easy for you, go for it. If eating only Yashan on the Sabbath is easy for you, go for it. Do it. That's exactly what you should be doing. This is how you can observe the Noahide laws and distinguish yourself from Jews and keep Lent in the kosher Jewish way, as it was supposed to be, as it was revealed in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 14. All right. Well, I think I've spoken about that enough. I want to go through some of the comments. We have some comments just from two people here. We have a shalom from Israel Kehelav Ein Sof. So he says shalom and salam, and God bless you too. Shalom, salam to you too. We have a comment from Gapa. What is that? Chojashk. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not sure what language that is. Chojashk. Or Chojashg. Or is it Chojashg maybe? Perhaps that's why there's a capital G. Anyway, Gapa, thank you for popping along. Good to see you. Hope I haven't messed up the pronunciation of your name. Perhaps you can tell me which one was correct in an email or in a text comment. That would be fantastic. He says, though, thank you very much for your informations. Thank you for enjoying it. And he says, the debunks you do is also applicable to Judaism itself. Absolutely, as I make very, very clear. There are the biggest debunk of them all with regards to Judaism is to remember that without the red heifer and without the temple, it's very, very likely that most Jews somewhere throughout their life are going to do something which excommunicates them from the house of Israel. And the only thing we can really do in Judaism is live as Noahides, trying to keep all the laws as Jews do. And that's really the maximum we do. We are basically Noahides, keeping all the laws that we can to try, but we believe and understand and acknowledge inside of ourselves that it's just our attempt to make the efforts. There is no such thing, if you are absolutely honest, there is no such thing as Israelite lineage among anybody. It's just a convention which is observed as, well, look, those Noahides are living in the maximum observance of the Jewish law, not just on Sabbaths, but all the way through the week. And we can tend to say, well, okay, they should belong with the Jewish, be counted with the Jewish people then, even though we ourselves acknowledge that this is really an impossibility. When we forget that, what I've just told you, really important point, when we forget that, then we become liars. And unfortunately, we live in a time post-Holocaust world where too many Jews have forgotten that. That's a very, very bad situation. And I hope that it will change. And it's really important for all of us to keep that memory alive and to keep the truth alive there. So yes, I do do that for Judaism itself. Judaism has been recorded, Baruch Hashem, it has been recorded in full detail before the Holocaust, and enough of it survives so we know exactly how we should be observing it, even though the Holocaust has destroyed the community of people who were observing it properly. And I absolutely disagree with anybody who says that Sephardim or Mizrahim are doing it properly. If you want to know what Sephardim and Mizrahim think, then you can take an example of Itzik Zarka, who was very famous. Itzik Zarka, Itzikzarka. Itzik Zarka is a perfect example of why we should never accept the Sephardic claim that they are somehow holy, pure, more preserved, or their lineage, blah, 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 blah. When you have people like him saying he's proud that 6 million Ashkenazim were killed and he wants 6 million more Ashkenazim to be killed, and he has been welcomed into the Likud party, a party for people who believe that Ashkenazim should be killed. Oh yes, because we're all Khazars, we're all Noahides, we're all converts, but they are so pure in their blood, even though they haven't had a red heifer for 2,000 years, which means none of them are Jewish. That's the fact of the matter, but never mind. You can just ignore that, right? No, you can't. So I do focus on that, and I'm glad that you've noticed that, and I hope you will be continue to follow the channel. So as I said, we had the comment from Israel Sof giving us the verse there. Thank you. While I was getting that up on the screen for us. And we also have another comment saying the Sefer HaChinuch is Parshat Emor Mitzvah number 403. I think that was on the list there. He's got question marks in it, so I think that's there. And also, how are you believing these nonsense modern diets are the way? Well, if you want to do it a modern diet, go for it if you want to lose weight. But we, as I said, do these things because they were revealed at Mount Sinai, and for no other reason. We're not imposing these things on people, as I make very, very clear. I want to make this absolutely clear again, just in case people like Agrippa have not understood, that we do not believe it's necessary for anybody in the world to do any of these things at all whatsoever in order to be a good person. Absolutely not. Judaism does not teach such a thing. We believe that there are people who we in our religion call Noahides all around the world, from any religion and from non-religion, who are good and decent people who are doing the right thing, as long as they don't kill each other, they don't steal from each other, they're not sexually immoral and debased, they're not cruel to animals, that they are not charlatans using God's name for their own vain purposes and pretending that they know what God wants when they have no idea at all whatsoever, and that they are not worshipping idols or trees and stones and things like that, as long as they abstain from all that. And they fight for justice, they uphold justice, and they are not unjust. Then we say, you're good people, you're doing fine. You are what we call Noahides. You are Gerim. You are B'nai Noach. That's good. And we don't require you to do anything. You're fine. You don't even have to know that I'm talking about you. You know, you are absolutely, totally fine. According to Judaism, you're accountable with God and you've got nothing to fear, should be. But we do not consider such people to be believers. All right, because you can't be a believer in something unless you believe in something which we believe in. And we have a revelation of Mount Sinai. And so if you want to believe in the revelation of Mount Sinai, then there are certain things you have to do because you're a believer and you want to be a believer according to Judaism. So absolutely, there is no reason to do any of these things except to be counted with the community of believers according to the revelation of Mount Sinai. There is no reason. So your question, how are you believing this nonsense? It's because we want to be counted with the community of believers as defined by the revelation of Mount Sinai. That's what believers are. You have to believe in something. Everybody has something they believe in. Some people believe in Santa Claus. Some people believe in the Easter Bunny. Some people believe in the Tooth Fairy. Some people believe in El Chizr. Some people believe in, I don't know what else. Some people believe in Elon Musk. I don't know why they would do such things. Okay, why would you believe in such people? Some people believe in Donald Trump. All right, some people believe in politicians. How could you believe a politician's nonsense? Right? Well, because you won't be counted with that particular political group. That particular party has meaning for you, and you won't be counted as one of them. All right, fine. How can you believe such nonsense? Because you want to be one of them. Fine. And so the answer is to you exactly the same. How can you believe such nonsense? The answer is because you want to be counted as one of the believers according to the revelation of Mount Sinai, the religion of the Bible, described in the Bible, throughout the Bible, even named in the New Testament, is Judaism. So you want to be a believer in Judaism, the biblical religion. Okay, it's named in the New Testament, people. I don't know why you're calling religion Christianity or Islam. It's named in the New Testament. All right. Nevertheless, in the New Testament, it should be Christian. It should have been named Christian. No, they named the religion Judaism in the New Testament. So the religion of the Bible, the biblical religion, is Judaism. If you want to be a believer in Judaism, you don't have to be a Jew. Never have had to be a Jew. We have never taught that you have to be a Jew to believe in Judaism. But you do have to be a Noahide, and you have to believe in Revelation Mount Sinai, and you're counted with the community of believers. And so that's why we believe in such nonsense. That's why we have tefillin. That's why we have tzitzit. That's why we have strange long hair at the sides of our heads. That's why, we don't walk, Jews don't walk 15 paces without covering our heads. If you have a kippah, you can put kippah on your head, or you can walk along 14 paces and put your hand on your head and take your hand off of your head and walk 14 paces and put your hand. And you can do such crazy things. And why do we do such crazy things? Because God says, you are my peculiar people. That's what he wants. He wants us to be his peculiar people, and he's given us peculiar stuff to follow. And we're very happy to do so because we love that, because we enjoy that, because it's what's written in our hearts. And that's what makes us into a community of people who are not just believers, but people who have something called the Brit Chadasha written on our covenant, on our hearts, the new covenant written on our hearts. And that's just part of our weird way. Why do some people dye their hair pink? Why do some people dye their hair blue? Why do some people pierce their noses and their eyes and their eyelids and their ears and all over the place and their nipples? Why do they do such strange stuff? Why do they do such weird stuff? Because that makes them happy. They believe that is something, that's something they want to do, and they believe it's going to make them happy, so they do it. Why does anybody do anything which is nonsense? Because we think it's going to make us happy. And that's why we do it, Gappa. That's why we do it. Now that I answer your question, what would be great is for you to consider yourself, what do you do that's nonsense? Be objective. Don't say, I don't do anything, I'm totally rational. Well, then you're deluded. Thinking like that would be nonsense. Everybody does some nonsensical thing. Everybody has some nonsense that they believe, or they do some nonsensical thing. And if you can acknowledge that, then that's great. But if you can't acknowledge that, you're mentally ill. And it's necessary for you to reflect deeply about yourself before you, try to examine the plank in somebody else's, splinter in somebody else's eye. You have to take the plank out of your own eye. So there you go. I hope you got that way. But modern diets are the way. Why not? If you want to do something for the Yashan period, for Lent, then why not just go on a diet? The idea of giving up fat, it's a good thing. It's going to make you lose weight. How about giving up fat and carbohydrates if you want to? Fat is a carbohydrate, but make sure you have no fat and give up bread, for example, if you can afford to do so in your country where you live, and the food that you have access to is going to mean that you can still have an enjoyable Sabbath. Go ahead, do it. Why not? Try and lose a few pounds. I think it's a great idea. So I will be trying to do that, definitely. So we have Eliab C saying, shalom, shalom, shalom to you too. And Eliab says, so you can fast anytime? You can fast anytime you want. Of course you can fast anytime. You can go on a diet anytime you want, but not on Sabbaths and Yom Tovs if you want to be considered a believer. If you want to be considered a believer according to Judaism, then not on Sabbaths and Yom Tovs. And so I think that's it. I think I've covered everything. This is not the Friday podcast. This is just because Lent has begun. The Yashan period is on, and Ramadan has begun. So we all should be doing something together. And I think it's a good time to, maybe go on a diet, as our friends have suggested. Go on a diet, try and lose some pounds, and make sure you're consistent about whatever it is. And he says, I fear they are just another lie. And he says, phenomenal answers. I don't know if that means I'm giving phenomenal answers. I think I'll take it that way. Yes. Or maybe he's saying, no, phenomenal answers are just a lie. He's afraid. Maybe one way or another. I think I'll just take phenomenal answers. Yes, thank you. These are phenomenal answers. And I'm glad you enjoyed them. All right, then. God bless you all. Take care. Have a great weekend. I might come on tomorrow and do another show for the Friday khutbah if I have chance with JC, if he's available. And if not, then I'll see you sometime later on in the week. We should probably talk about Itzik Sarka again and make sure that everybody understands, do do not take these Sephardic Jews too seriously when they talk about purity of bloodlines and blah, 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 blah. The reality is that Judaism does not believe in the divine right of kings. Our Messiah has never been of this world. Our Messiah is a divine Messiah. That is the Sar HaPanim. That is the phrase for the Jewish Messiah. Sar HaPanim, described in verse 2 of the book of Exodus, the Spirit of God who hovers over the waters. This is the Messiah in Judaism, the Spirit of God who hovers over the waters. Go and research it, do your research, and you'll realize that is the truth. So since that Spirit of God who hovers over the waters is the soul of the Messiah, what earthly king are we waiting for? Who cares about bloodlines? Nothing is good enough. So don't take these people too seriously when they're waffling away in their chat forums. I had a lot of people writing about this stuff. Ignore them. Just pull them down. Tell them, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. They are absolutely delusional. I mean, I should say before I go, I suppose, rather than getting to another show, just as I'll close here, the reason why they go on about this is the word Israel, which you've heard, people like Neturei Karta who've been on my show before, will be very, very angry about this Mamzer state in the Middle East calling itself Israel. Now, why are they so angry? They say it's blasphemy to call yourself Israel. This cannot be. Israel in the Torah is defined as my firstborn son. God says to Moses, go and tell Pharaoh, Israel is my firstborn son. Now, Israel means the firstborn son of God. This is Israel. I say, well, hold on a second. Wasn't Israel Jacob? Didn't Jacob just wrestle with an angel or wrestle with some guy? And then the guy said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, as a blessing. And why you don't understand, I suppose, is you're not looking at things in Jewish eyes, is that a name is very, very important. Remember that the word we give to God is Hashem. We call God Hashem. We don't call God in common conversation. We don't use any other of the titles or names for God given in the Bible. We call him only one of those names. We call him Hashem. Okay, Hashem literally means the name. So people would often be given names of God as a symbol that this is the attribute of God that I worship. And when we named our children, if we give our children a name, we say this is the attribute of God that you should worship in your life. Because we believe that when you give somebody a name, it sort of shapes their destiny. Now, Yaakov had been given the name Yaakov. It means heel grabber. It means grabber. Because he was grabbing his brother's heel when he came out of the womb. He was born with twins, with Esau. And Esau came out first, and Yaakov was grabbing his heel. So they called him Yaakov. But this grabber name was not a great name. It wasn't a symbol. It wasn't a great name for him to live by. So when he asked for a blessing from this angel, and the angel says, what is your name? He says, Yaakov. He says, well, from now on you shall be called Israel. Israel is a blessing. Israel is a name I'm giving you. This is a holy name I'm giving you. This is a holy name that I'm giving you as a blessing. Israel, given as a blessing to Yaakov, basically means from now on, you should worship Israel, not Yaakov. Not grabbing. Grabbing should not be the thing which shapes your life, but struggling to understand God. Israel should be the thing which shapes your life. This is what makes you into Israel. So by giving him a new name, he's giving a divine name. He's giving the name Israel to him. So when we talk about children of Israel, we're really talking about people who believe in that attribute of God. Israel is a name of an attribute of God. That's an attribute that we should follow. So it's not really right to give this divine name to a people or a country or land which is not doing that. In fact, to regard the land of Canaan, the Mamzer state, as Israel, as the true Israel, is blasphemy in Judaism. That's not allowed. You're not actually allowed to do that. But these people who are this Sephardic sort of tradition, this kind of person, this Itzik Zarka type Jew out there, this kind of Mizrahi type Jew out there, they don't understand this concept of Hashem in the way that they should understand it. Many of them do, but those are the ones who've really studied deeply Ashkenazi Jewish tradition, Pharisaical Jewish tradition, Romanian Jewish tradition, etc., etc. I'm sorry to be a bit harsh. There are going to be plenty of Sephardim going to be very angry with me for saying this, but I've got to say it because it's got to be clarified and something has to be nailed on the head, hammered very hardly, very harshly on the head. We have to hammer this point. They don't understand God the way Jews understand God. Why? Because they're all converts. Their ancestors were converts. That's the reality of the situation. Most people in the world today who are Jews are converts. Ashkenazim are mostly converts. We have Jewish paternal lineages. Yes, it's true, the genetics has proven that, but our maternal lineages are all converts. Therefore, we're all converts. The Mizrahi Jews are all Persian converts from the time of Esther, when they had Purim and they won the Purim. The story of Purim, the Jews won, and many Persians converted to Judaism. And the Beta Israel, what they call the Falashas, they're also converts from the Oriental Orthodox Church, from the Tawahido Church. They all converted. They all became Noahides, and then they all became Judaized Noahides. Noahides must never be Judaized, but when you are Judaized, like the Sephardim, the Mizrahim, the Ashkenazim, and the Beta Israel, then the problem is you're going to start misunderstanding things. Noahides have to understand God the way Jews understand God. If you don't, you're going to get it wrong. So when Sephardim, Mizrahim, or any of the other people who are out there saying that they are the pure divine bloodline of Yaakov, what they're actually saying is, not Yaakov, when they call themselves Israel, they're saying, I am a God. That's what they're saying to you. They're saying, I am a God, worship me. I deserve your worship. I deserve you to worship me, because I have divine blood. That's what they're saying. Well, we don't believe this. We do not descend from Israel. We descend from Yaakov, who was given the name Israel as a blessing to help him have a better life, to have a better destiny. And we are children of that blessing. We are not children of that deity, of that being, of that divine angelic being, what we call Sar HaPanim. Because Israel is actually the name, another name. There are plenty of names for Sar HaPanim, but it's a name of Sar HaPanim, God's firstborn son. That's what it is, as the Bible tells us. So to say, I have a pure bloodline, I have a pure ancestral descent from Israel, from Jacob, and to try and prove it, it's basically to say, those people are saying, I descend from God. I am divine, my blood is divine, worship me, I'm genetically different from you. I have divine genetics. So that's why we don't like such people. Now they say, with Ashkenazim Jews will say, we don't make any such claim, or at least until the Holocaust, none of us made any such claim. We always said, no, we descend from Khazars, our paternal lines are Israelite, our paternal lines are Israelite, but our maternal lines are not Israelite, and Judaism comes from your maternal line, not from your paternal line. It doesn't matter who your father's line is. It's irrelevant in Judaism. All that matters is, do you keep the Torah, or was your mother a Torah observant Jew? And if not your mother, was your mother's mother a Torah observant Jew? And if not your mother's mother, was your mother's mother's mother a Torah observant Jew? And if the answer to any of those questions is yes, then it says, then you're still Jewish. But if your mother's 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 mother was a Torah observant Jew and nobody else was from that time on, guess what? According to Judaism, you are not Jewish. Don't fall for the lie when people say it comes down your mother's line. It only comes down your mother's line for 3 generations, but after that, you've lost it. You're not Jewish at all whatsoever. So the Anusim, the Anusim who like saying, oh, well, we have Jewish ancestors. They're not Jewish. They're simply not Jewish, because their mother's 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 mother was not Jewish, didn't practice Judaism, wasn't a Torah observant Jew. So they're not Jews. They have Jewish ancestry, and that's nice because we take people who have Jewish ancestry as a perfect example. Well, you should try to become a Noahide then. You should try and convert to Judaism then. Okay, we try to only target those people for conversion to Judaism. We don't target everybody on the planet for conversion to Judaism, only such people for conversion to Judaism, because nobody else needs to. But since it's something which is in your history, in your family history, then we will target you for conversion to Judaism. But never, ever believe that somebody who says, well, I have this lineage and I'm pure. No, you're not. The only thing which makes you a Jew or a Noahide is a believing Noahide is the Torah, is the law itself. The law is the seed of a Jew. And without the law, there is no Jew. It's not something which gets passed down in your blood. It does not come from your father's line, and neither does it come from your mother's line beyond 3 generations. No. So there is no genetic Jew. All of us are only halakhic Jews. There is no genetic Jew. There's nobody who can boast, I have a pure 100% Ashkenazi. So what? It means nothing. I have a pure 100% Ashkenazi genealogy or genetic test came back. There was 100% Sephardi. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. There is no divine bloodline in Judaism. because we do not descend from the name Israel. We descend from a guy who was blessed by the name Israel. And anybody who claims to be that name, that divine name, Israel, is claiming to be God. That's what they're claiming to be. And I hope I've managed to explain it clearly for you. So don't believe such things. Don't believe such people. Put them in their place when you hear them speaking, and make sure, because it's going to make the world a better place. It's a tikkun which has to be done. And there comes a time when the nations who are believers, and I'm talking really only for this channel, is really only for believing Noahides. It's not for anybody else. If anybody else is watching, well, I hope you're enjoying it, but it's not for you. This is a missionary channel for Messianic Noahides. And if we talk about Islam and you enjoy the videos on Islam, then I'm glad you enjoyed the videos on Islam, and I hope you'll enjoy videos on Christianity, and I hope you'll enjoy comments on Judaism too. But this is really not a video about any of those specific topics. It's only a channel for this missionary work to Messianic Noahides out there. That's all this channel is about. We just want to promote and push Messianic Noahides all the time. That's what we do. And if you want to know more, the Messianic Noahides are the guys who are going to save the world, because the apostate Jews can only be saved by Noahides, specifically Messianic Noahides. Only Messianic Noahides can save the apostate Jews. So there are Jews out there, believing Jews, whose job it is to stimulate belief among the Noahides so that Noahides can save the world. Remember Cyrus the Great, Koresh in the Bible? He was a non-Jew. He was a Noahide. He was a non-Jew. And what do we call him? We call him Messiah. Why? Because he actually saved many, many apostate Jews. He saved Jews from going completely off the path by saying, go back to Israel, establish the temple with my blessing. I'm giving you the land. It's my land. I'm giving it to you to enjoy. I want you to build a temple here. Here's the money for the temple. And he blessed us in this way. So the non-Jew who is a Noahide, a believing Noahide, who helps and supports Jews, is Cyrus, is that kind of Messiah. It's one of the kinds of Messiah, and that kind of non-Jew is the ones who are going to help save the apostate Jews. Now, the apostate Jews are the people out there who keep on calling themselves Jews left, right, and center, but they have no knowledge of what it is that makes you a Jew. All right? They don't realize that it's halakha, and only halakha, and not DNA, and not parentage, not blood, I should say, which makes you into a Jew. It is only halakha alone. Not your maternal line, because only 3 generations count. And beyond that, it's not counted. Only halakha alone makes you. So if the Noahides know this kind of Judaism better than Jews do, then those Noahides are going to put those Jews to shame, because those Jews are going to say, I don't believe you. You're rubbish. And they're going to go off, and they're going to check with somebody, and somebody's going to say, yeah, that's true. And they're going to go, whoa, I didn't realize that. There are Noahides out there who know Judaism better than I do. It'll put them into their place solidly. It'll make the world a better place. So make sure you remember this, the things you learn from this channel, and use them when the opportunity arises. Don't be shy. You are the sword of Allah. If you like it that way, if you've got lots of Muslims watching, you are the sword of Allah. Okay, you are the Saif Allah. You are the ones who are going to make the world a better place. Okay, so and if you're Christians out there, you are the sword of the word. Okay, so if you were learning from this channel, use it, and make sure you put such people, the Itzarkas of the world, put them in their place. Make sure they realize that they are nothing. They are nothing but apostate Jews. And by the way, the hierarchy goes like this: observant Jew, Noahide, and apostate Jew is underneath it. So you've got non-believer, and then underneath non-believer, you have apostate Jew right at the very bottom of the barrel. They're the worst, according to Judaism. Above Jew, you have observant Noahide, who keeps and preserves Judaism, encourages Jews to keep Judaism. They are the holiest. They're at the top level. A Noahide who encourages a Jew to keep Judaism has a level of holiness which is greater than the high priest of Israel in the holiest place of Israel, the Holy of Holies, on the holiest day, that is Yom Kippur. That level of holiness by the Noahide who observe these, he's at number 1. So number 1 is that kind of Noahide. Then number 2, the Jew. Then the regular Noahides. Then the non-believers. And at the very bottom, you've got the apostate Jews, the Jews who call themselves Jews, but they haven't got a clue about it. They are all in need of a return. And the full redemption of the planet Earth is not going to come until all of those apostate Jews actually make it back. When they have all returned back, when they have all come back, that's when the final redemption will come. But if it's not going to happen unless the nations make it happen. That's why God will pour his spirit out upon the nations, and the nations are going to make it happen. Well, the nations have gone far astray right now because they've been worshipping apostate Jews. I'm telling you the truth. There are so many Christians out there saying, oh, those who bless Israel will be blessed. And they think that Israel is a bunch of apostate Jews in the Middle East. So they're blessing them, sending their cash over there, and they're destroying the planet. They're destroying the world. They're doing the exact opposite of Tikkun Olam. They're doing the exact opposite. They're doing Tikkun Olam means making the world a better place. The exact mirror opposite of that is a satanic practice, making the world a worse place. And they're being encouraged to do so by preachers who are actually directly genuine Satanists, pretending to be believers, because to become a priest in the church of Satan, you must first become a pastor or a priest or a bishop or whatever in a Christian church first, or even an imam in Islamic mosque first. You must become a preacher of the Abrahamic faiths first before you can be considered a priest in the church of Satan. And these are Satanists who have done this and are trying to lead people astray and make the world a worse place, because Satanists are absolute anarchists. Now you say, well, aren't you some kind of anarchist? Like, no, not all socialists are anarchists. I'm a socialist. I'm a proto-socialist. The Bible is proto-socialist. The Torah is definitely proto-socialist. The New Testament is proto-socialist. The Quran is proto-socialist. So I'm a proto-socialist and I promote that, all right? But socialism is not anarchy, okay? Socialism is not anarchy. Anarchists say that they're socialists, but anarchists want no control. They want to return to the law of the jungle. They think that people... this is the maddest thing in the world. They think because people are able to organize themselves into a queue when you're standing and waiting for a bus, all right, without any police standing saying, stand up and queue up, all right? They think that because people can arrange themselves in queues to go shopping and to get onto a bus, that they don't need to have any government at all whatsoever, any kind, because humans are basically self-organizing. We can do that. Well, they've obviously never been to Israel. They've obviously never been to Bulgaria. They've obviously never been. There's so many places around the world where they've obviously never been to Hong Kong. They've never been to places where they see when the train arrives in the train station, the doors open and it's a free-for-all. It's like everybody mashes in at the same time. I don't know what's wrong with those people, those anarchists. They've like never traveled outside of their own protected little privileged circles, and they think that, we don't need any government. Everyone's a pretty decent human being at the end of the day. Well, obviously that's not the case. Or they know that that's not the case, and they say, yes, that's right. Let's just make it all anarchy one day, and the whole world will become like the law of the jungle will be restored, and then the mightiest, the strongest, the fittest will survive, and we can crush everybody out of the way. Well, that's exactly what the Satanists are onto. And there are plenty of those people who've become priests and bishops and pastors and imams and even rabbis in the Abrahamic faiths in order to be counted as a priest in the church of Satan, because you cannot do so unless you cannot be counted as a priest in the church of Satan unless you do this first. So the worst people to consider as believers are the priests and the imams and the rabbis, because they could be actually just Satanists who are on their journey to becoming priests in the church of Satan. So be very careful of that. Best is to refer to the texts, refer to the text of the New Testament, refer to the text of the Quran itself, refer to the Mishnah Torah, the Talmud itself, and the records of Rashi and the Tosafists and everything that came up and is written before the Holocaust. We're going to refer to it because those are the ways you're going to identify what the religion is really all about, not by following the heads of the churches or the heads of the religious congregations. That's definitely not the way to go. Okay, so that's a little bit off the track, but I wanted to say that before I say goodbye. And we have a response there from Gappa saying, wow. And he genuinely wants me to carry on, even though I've really finished off the topic and I really have to go. He says, can I briefly comment on Zoroastrianism before I go? Zoroastrianism, according to our tradition, it was established by Daniel, the prophet Daniel, when he was the chief of the Magi in Babylon and in Persia. He was the one who taught them their religion. And one of the greatest students among them was Zarathustra, was Zoroaster himself. And also another one who he taught was somebody called Smerdis, who was also not Gautama, is it Gautama or Gautama? I get confused. One of them, he was supposed to be the original Buddha as well. So Buddhism and Zoroastrianism in our tradition comes from Daniel. So they are Noahide faiths, and they have their origin like that. So they have some things in common with what we believe, and that's why there's so many commonalities between the Abrahamic faiths and Zoroastrianism and Buddhism around the world. And if you want to know even more, then where does Judaism itself come from? It's basically a kind of a monotheistic Hinduism in its perfect origin. And the Hindus have a kind of a memory of this because they remember Brahma and his wife Saraswati, and they remember the children of Brahma are the Brahmins, and they also have the god of Brahma, or the ultimate sort of divine force behind Brahma is Brahman. And this Brahman, Brahma, Brahmin, Saraswati sort of thing is all nothing but a corrupted memory of Abraham, his wife Sarah, and the god of Abraham, that's Brahman, and of course the children of Abraham, Brahmin. So, all of our major religions actually come from this. And anything other than those major religions is basically a philosopher who is inspired by something, or a native religion, which is part of the Noahide religions of the planet, of people who are basically doing good things. So you want to have like Taoism. Taoism is very much also related to its origin of a kind of Hinduism, so it has the same origin in that, and so it has some things in common with Judaism. The idea of a divine assembly in a heavenly assembly, and the gods sitting down around the heavenly Savior, and the heavenly emperor, who is the god of gods, the Shah in Persian, or that is I can't say the names in Judaism because I'm not allowed to say the names in Judaism. But we have the pantheon, if you like, is actually a kind of a heavenly assembly. We call it the Heavenly Council of 70 around God. And that is also there in Judaism. They have, if you want to call them sons of God, the angels are there around God, or Father Almighty, who is there seated at the throne on high. And so they have their traditions, and a lot of it is very similar. If you go down Taoism, there's a lot of that. And then you've got Confucianism, is a kind of a philosophy, but he's inspired by the same concepts that Lao Tzu was inspired by, the same Chinese native religion, which is, as I said, this kind of Noahide faith. And so all the religions around the world will come down to this. If you believe that we are connected and that humans have been interacting with each other, some people are mad enough to believe that there's been no interaction between any humans on the planet forever, and so these religions just spontaneously appeared here, like autochithonously or chithonically from the ground somehow. But that's not the way we would consider it to be the case. That we would say that no, there was actually a contact between different communities. People have always spread ideas around in the same way that you want to follow the agriculture around the world. Even when you think that there's no contact, for example, between the people of the Americas, North America and South America, thousands of years ago, supposed to have no contact with people of the Old World. Old World, if you don't know, is actually Africa, Asia, and Europe and Australasia. This sort of area is considered the Old World. And if you follow agriculture, you say, well, look, the agriculture, the grains that you're using in the Americas are actually genetically related to the grains which are being used in Samaria. So how? And the answer is because people migrate, people carry these things around. And so there's always been contact. And if you want to understand how religion spread around, you also should just have a look at how grains have spread around the world and how agriculture has spread around the world from Samaria. And it all goes back to there. Anyway, okay, I've covered that in brief, as you asked. Gappa, I covered it briefly as I possibly could. But I've really got to go. God bless you all. Take care and shalom. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.